Welcome to the new episode. All that jazz. I'm Cosmetology, and I have with me Michelle Thompson. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for
I'm
having.
good. How are you?
Great. Great.
I, I think I'm reminded of George. I had George on my podcast a while ago, and he recommended you, I think, and that's how I got to know you. So here you are now.
I am here. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you also have a new book out, Be Your Own Hero. And
Yeah.
uh and that's probably a lot of stories. Is that's like your first book that you came out with?
hmm Yeah, it's my first book. It took me a long time to write it. It was because I had to get like super vulnerable and
Mm,
I just really was challenged by that,
I
putting out this information about yourself really makes you have to get really, it's very vulnerable space to be in. And it took me a long time to get that courage to actually do it.
Does vulnerable mean you have to? It's kind of like you're crying on the inside. When I would think of vulnerable, when somebody says I have to get vulnerable, I'm like always thinking, man, this is I have to like almost like hurt myself in a way to get better.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. It's like it feels like that sometimes. It's for me, vulnerability means that you're putting yourself in a position where people view you in a space in which you could be judged.
Hmm.
And so and that could be any kind of feeling. Like some people, it's very easy for them to talk about their feelings, so it's not really vulnerable, but they may have some stuff about their past that they don't want to talk about, and if they did, it would make them feel vulnerable because that means somebody could actually attack you or hurt you because of what you said,
Hmm.
judge you, criticize you, that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, don't want that. So it's good to have the past cleared and all that stuff. It's if people have skeletons in the closets, it's very bad, right? You ever work with people that have a lot of secrets and they don't wanna share the secrets, right? It's terrible, right? Because
Yeah.
they're afraid to share. They're afraid to share anything.
Oh, that's the scariest thing with working with somebody like me because I expect them to be vulnerable and I want them to we have to go through and do all that shadow work and get into the deepest, darkest parts of your soul to heal all that. And that can be really scary to look at because people either don't want to look at it themselves or they're so afraid that if they put it out there, they're going to be seen differently than they want to be seen.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, so that's why it's kind of best to have a session or work with somebody that perhaps doesn't know you. But then eventually, once they work with you, then they know you after a while, and then like maybe then after a while they're embarrassed to add more things to the pile, you know? I'm like,
I
oh
don't know,
no.
I almost feel the opposite,
Okay.
like I really I it's like you meet somebody and you're thinking, oh, you want to be friends with them. It's like you don't know this person, or maybe it's a therapist and you're like, you don't know enough about them to know if they're going to judge you. So it's
Yeah.
like sometimes it's harder. It's easier to get like I personally can I feel like it's much easier to get vulnerable with people that I feel like they've earned that trust.
Mm.
So
Yeah, maybe there's certain things about me, but where sometimes when I'm working with somebody, then if something new happens or something that I didn't like that happened, then I'm like, oh, okay, this is maybe gonna disappoint the way they see me. Maybe that's my peculiarity of the way I see it, because I sometimes work with other people with healers and stuff, and have a previous relationship with.
yeah. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is because being in the industry that I'm in, um,
Yeah,
it is people sort of have this expectation of you, you know, to behave a certain way or to live a certain way, to act a certain way, to feel a certain way, and I think we all kind of do that when we start putting people up on a pedestal. And it's like, if they make a mistake, then they fell off of that high pedestal that we put them on.
yeah. But sometimes it's good to see people in your mind fall off the pedestal because then you're like, hey, I'm not too bad, you know. They're not so they're not so high above me. I'm not too bad either, you know. It's
Um,
okay. It's okay,
I know.
right?
That's one of the reasons why I decided to go ahead and put the book out, is because I needed people to understand, that if I could overcome this, so can
Mm,
you. And so, and that has been kind of a lesson for me, as well as that people trust me more because they know I'm not just somebody who's just saying something. This is a person that lived through it and overcame
yeah,
it.
yeah. So I'm really curious what you overcame. So let's go back to to your
Mhm.
early beginnings
Yeah.
and I imagine like a lot of people growing up, there was some toxic stuff going on, right
Yeah.
or wrong.
Absolutely. I grew up that way. So I was raised in a very Protestant, hardcore, Bible banging Christian. And when I say Bible banging, I mean, it's not a metaphor. I mean,
Like literally
yeah, like the
literally bang your head with the Bible. No.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like they would get up on a pulpit and they would like either take the Bible and just slam it, or and screaming, and they would have like sweat pouring down their face because they'd be like so ramped up over what they were teaching. And sometimes they'd take
Mm,
their fist and hammer it against the pulpit. There was a lot of you know indoctrination and a lot of mental manipulation that went along with all the fear-based stuff. Um
yeah.
and so I was isolated a lot because my family didn't let me hang out with normal people. And so I was this
Right.
young person that either had to be supervised with other children, through either my mom's Girl Scouts or the church group or something like that. So I was really never exposed to the world at all.
Right. They wanted to protect you in a way, in their naive way. They wanted to see you be protected and not be out in the corrupt world. I see the naive good intention there, but sometimes it really backfires. And
That's backfire.
I also yeah. Did they ever like take the Bible and actually beat you with the Bible? No,
No, but
because they'd be like,
I've seen my dad actually like throw it across the room when he got mad.
oh yeah, well
Like,
that's more
but
common.
yeah, but there was a lot of corporal punishment involved. Like, if you talk back, and it was a very extreme, isolated kind
Oh
of back.
yeah, very
Um,
strict, right, wrong. Yeah, okay, yep.
yeah, exactly. And so like kind of moving forward, as I started to be exposed to the world, which I didn't have a choice because I was in public school, I didn't fit in.
Mm.
And there was and aside from that, I grew a whole lot faster than everyone else.
Were
So
you in the South? Like,
yeah, I live in Texas,
okay, you grew up in, okay, all right,
in the South.
fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like 2 heads taller than everybody else in elementary. I'm 9 years old and I'm already, way taller than everybody else. Everybody has these little bitty skinny figure, little bitty bodies. And here I am all of a sudden, developing curves and tall, and my hair is very curly naturally. And back in those days, because I'm 57, so back in those days we didn't have blow dryers and curling irons and straighteners and all that kind of stuff. So my mom would roll my hair in rollers and stick me under a hair dryer. And I would go to school and we'd have gym every day and we'd have to go outside. My hair would just like, and so the kids started calling me names like Treetop and the Goon and stuff like that. So I started to experience this overwhelming feeling of self-hatred
Hmm.
and depression, because people didn't like me. I was different. I wasn't attractive. I was just this abnormality, that people didn't like, and I didn't
Yep.
know how to communicate with people. It was very, very difficult for me. And then when I got into high school, it just got worse, my parents didn't take me shopping and buy me, designer jeans. Back in those days, it was Jordache and Guess. I didn't own those kind of things. My mom would either make my clothes or she would go to a resale
Yep.
store and buy them. And so there was a lot of kind of forced into this weird abstract space, and
Hmm.
just all this depression started setting in. And as I became an adult, I moved out on my own when I was 18, and as an adult, or a young adult, and really now being exposed to the world on my own, I had no clue. I got away from the church, but I started trying to expand myself, spiritually, like try, I was going to try to figure it out because this wasn't the way, obviously. And all I could feel and experience with people was this horrible nature that they had, and the meanness and the rejection and the things they said to me. Even as a young person, it was so hard. And so I really became very recluse, and the depression just got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I got to a point where there was no level of depression outside of it. It was either, what level of depression am I in?
Oh wow. But so you were so you moved out of your parents' house and did you start work or were you like where were you living?
I moved. I also, well, my mom encouraged me to take cosmetology in high school.
Okay.
So I graduated from high school. I had a cosmetology license. So I went and worked in a beauty salon, and I went and got an apartment and just moved out. And it was a perfect opportunity because my dad got a job in North Dakota, and my mom flew out to go visit him. And,
Yeah.
and so I was like, I'm out, so I went
Okay.
back to the apartment, signed it, and she was like, you can't do this. And I go, it's too late. I've already done it.
Right.
And
So
um,
on your
for,
job, did you also like any interaction that you had, was that filling you more with depression because of the way, because obviously high school is different than when you start working in the real world, but you had so much damage growing up, middle school and high school, the bullying that just kind of carried over, and anything you did would just would not change that, right? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't really matter, because I worked in a beauty salon and started learning how to do my hair and makeup and all that kind of stuff. So attractiveness was not the issue anymore.
Right.
But I still didn't believe that I looked good. And it didn't, I honestly just thought people didn't like me. And I started finding myself attracted to people that were damaged, just like
Mm,
me. So I would find these friends that were just as damaged, and hurt people. So then
yeah.
they would end up, you know, casting out that knife, that just struck you in the heart. Um, because one little thing that they thought was off, boom, they were gone. And you don't mean to upset people, but you never know what their triggers are going to be, especially with people that have just as much
Right.
trauma as you do. And so
Right.
their judgment level is much higher. And so I started to experience all this rejection and abandonment and pain. And so I thought the solution was to find a man that would love me and take care of me and be my hero, right? He was going
Seems
to
like
live.
a logical conclusion.
he was gonna find me, whisk me off on a white horse, and it was gonna all be better. And it's this whole Cinderella syndrome that I
Right.
started going through. Um, and I I got married very young, and the man that I married, and I had a child very young. I was 22 when I had my daughter, and he was very non-affectionate, very, withheld all of his emotions. And I would just sit there and cry and say, I just want you to love me. And he'd say, well, then make sure that you do the things you're supposed to do. Like,
Oh, wow.
don't
Okay.
overflow the trash can, or, don't forget to turn on the dishwasher, or whatever it was I, forgot to do.
Okay. Very conditional, like do this or else,
And I'll
beware.
love you if you follow all the rules. And it just, and I couldn't
Like your
see.
family. Like your family.
Exactly. And so it's like I couldn't be this perfection that he expected me to be. And because I wasn't that person, he withheld that love from me. And so that depression got even stronger, and that self-loathing and hatred of myself just continued to get
Mm.
worse. So I thought the only solution was, you know, just continue to worship God, and God's going to love me, and one day I'm just going to be rescued off to heaven, and that'll be it. I'll just serve my
Right.
sins here, and then
Right.
I'll find my reward up in heaven.
Right.
And so I
Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you, or something
yeah,
like that. Yes.
yeah.
Mm.
So in the book I kind of talk about how we see God as sort of like outside of ourselves, and that it's sort of like we're in this cave and we're looking for the light outside of the cave. However,
Mm.
what we're actually need is for to be able to draw that light inside of us, because it's the light inside the cave. If you see the cave as ourself, and then that light is out there, you're always seeking for something outside of yourself. And I was always
Right.
reaching out to be loved, but I never truly loved myself. I never got into that space where I accepted who I was and loved who I was, until later. Um, so do you want me to tell you like about the book, or do you want to do you have some questions, because that's like the beginning of, I kind of talk about the history of it. And then there's this.
I'm just curious about how you started that, because I obviously we don't know each other, and the audience
Yeah.
doesn't know you. Is that the beginning of the book, basically your journey, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
So
talking
this was.
about all that pain that I went through. That's why it was so vulnerable for me. But what's really interesting is the people that have actually read it
Mhm.
have messaged me back saying, "Oh my God, you're telling my story." And this one girl said, and when I was reading this, I said, "Is she talking about me? Did she? Is she writing about me?" And I was like, "Wow, that's so interesting." This one girl told me that she cried through the whole book, and because
Wow.
it really like hits you. I didn't realize, when I was writing it, that my intention wasn't to make people cry. It was to tell them how to overcome
Right.
that, no matter how dark and deep your pain is. You know,
Mm.
I think I said that I was in the worst of the worst of the worst place. And if somebody like me can overcome that, then anybody can.
At what point in your journey did you then start to change your Christian worldview perspective that you have of the world, and then you were starting to find other
Yeah.
books or tools? What was
Yeah.
the first thing you remember?
So basically I was an avid book reader, and
Mm.
so I used to go to the bookstore all the time, and I was constantly looking in self-help books, thinking, because I'd gone to therapists and nothing worked.
Right.
I didn't feel like they were helping me on any level. And I don't know how many times they'd say something that really pissed me off, and I would be like, I'm never
Oh, like
you.
Was it psychotherapy?
Yeah.
Psychotherapy? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I decided that I was gonna try to do it myself. So I wouldn't hit the bookstore, and I would go in there
Yeah.
and I would have like 10 or 15 books, and I'd sit on the floor and just read like the first chapter to see if is this gonna be the one, like is this gonna get me somewhere? And I would spend hours in the bookstore, and I'd leave with a stack of books and I'd read the stuff, and eventually I ended up landing on a book that Wayne Dyer wrote. And
Oh
it was,
yeah. Wayne Dyer. Yep.
yeah. And it was called You See It, You'll See It When You Believe It. And
Mm.
it wasn't my intention to kind of lean into that spiritual aspect of it. I was literally looking for psychological help. And but in the book, he basically summed it up as you may not think this is your problem, but it is your problem. You created it. And so you're the only one
Mm.
that can solve it. And he basically said, nobody's going to be your hero. Nobody's going to rescue you. You have to fix it yourself. And I remember sitting there going, you have got to be kidding me. I created this. I created all this. It's my fault that nobody likes me. It's my fault that everybody treats me like shit. It's my fault that, you know,
Right.
and so I was just like, oh my God, if I did this, then I have to fix it. So I started moving in a direction. I started reading more of his stuff, and I started seeing how he was kind of got this whole spiritual twist. So I started leaning in that direction. So I started heading over to the spiritual section, and um, got into learning more about spiritualism versus religion. And that kind of started that pathway in that direction. I would show up for some workshops.
Oh,
Finding,
you ever went to see Wayne Dyer?
yeah,
Because he
actually,
was quite. You
mm,
did?
mm. Yeah, actually, it did. There was, and there was a convention he was involved with when uh, Louise Hayes, I was trying to remember her name, sorry. When
Uh,
Louise Hayes was alive, it was like right before she died, they did this big, like world tour, and it was called I Can. And he was there. He was the main speaker, and he spoke for like 2 hours, something like that. And
wow.
it was really great. Yeah.
Yeah, he was an amazing speaker and had this great voice too, and yeah, a lot of wisdom. So you went to that. What was your impression of Wayne Dyer when you went to that?
Amazing. I wanted to meet him so bad. I wish I could have. I wish I could have met him before he died. It was like on my bucket list, like I told myself I'm going to become famous, and one day I'm going to walk in there, and I'm going to have dinner with him, and he was going to be because he was like my hero, he's the one
Yeah,
that's alive, at least he was that beginning point that set me on that road to recovery. I wouldn't say he was the all end all, but he
yeah.
was definitely the, put me on that road to recovery, that pathway to moving forward.
Does that mean when you got into Wayne Dyer, obviously you changed your spiritual practice? Did you stop going to church at that point?
I stopped going to church after I graduated from high school.
Okay, okay. So yeah, was your family even more distant because of that? Because they must have been aware on some level.
Yeah, I didn't really get into what I believed, or
Oh, okay, okay.
they were out of state for a long time, and so I was sort of like out on my own. My mom was trying really hard to get me, you know, to get on a plane and get there, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to happen. Um, so they were gone for several years, and it was right about the time that I met my first husband that they actually moved back, and then I ended up
Yeah,
my mom was there when I had my daughter and that kind of stuff. And right around that time, my parents got a divorce. So my mom was going through her own trauma. And so that
right.
religion thing sort of got like pushed aside, and it was all about, now me kind of stepping up, trying to, you know, help her
Help your
through.
mother. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Wayne Dyer probably opens other doors. When you're exploring him, he probably mentions other uh writings or teachers that he liked.
Yeah. It opened up a lot. I mean, I started to explore workshops. I got involved in some kind of spiritual community. I ended up finding the spiritual community that had like channelers. And so I would go over there once a week and I listened to them channel, that kind of stuff. It was there was this one guy, he channeled some entity called Lahala, and we would go over there and listen to him speak. It was, and I met a lot of spiritual people through that network, and it was a point of growth. So it was kind of like opening up that spectrum of ideas and thoughts. But prior to that, I would not have been open to that be if something didn't happen. And that
Mm.
was, I came into my personal spiritual gifts. And when that happened, it was like, I don't know what to do. And that's how I ended up meeting somebody that said, you need to kind of like start going over here. I'm going to take you here because this is the only people that's going to be able to understand you. I
Oh,
Yeah, because I started
it,
hearing voices, I started seeing ghosts, I started, they were trying to talk to me, and I was, I was getting very clairvoyant, and I was extremely empathic, and I didn't know how to manage that. And all this started kicking in like really strong. It was real strong when I was a child, but it got suppressed because my mom thought something was wrong with me. So she'd take me to the doctor. Oh, she's talking to people that aren't there and stuff like
oh,
that.
I see.
You
So
know,
you had a gift before, like you came in the world with a gift, and
Mm.
then when you were into Wayne Dyer and all that, and whatever you were doing, maybe you were doing meditation or something that enhanced it, probably.
Yeah, I started meditating to talk to God. And I remember reading something in a book, and then Wayne Dyer mentioned something about, them meditating in the Bible. And I was like, yeah, I think I remember that. So I started searching it in the Bible, and I'm like, oh, they meditate, I'm gonna go do it. And so I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's how you talk to God. So I mean, I remember the first time I ever meditated was before I was married, and I literally like laid down on the bed and, like just, all right, banter for a while, praying, and then said, okay, I'm gonna listen. And I would just I'm just like laying there going, waiting for something to happen. And so I thought something was wrong. I didn't do it right, all that kind of stuff. There was like, that was in the very, very beginning. But once the
Yeah.
gift started coming in, I had no idea. This one particular spirit started showing up a lot, and he was very kind of aggressive about wanting to talk to me. And there was a lot of fear involved because of my upbringing. I didn't know how, so I got, back then we didn't have cell phones. Okay. We didn't
Right.
even, right. So you have a landline. So I remember
This in
sitting on
the
the
80s,
floor. Huh? Is that what?
the 80s.
Yeah, it was late 80s. Yeah.
Mm.
And I remember sitting on the floor, and I grabbed the phone and this long cord, and sitting on the living room floor, and with the yellow pages because we didn't have internet. And I'm flipping through, calling every single church that's listed in the book, telling them about what happened to me. These spirits are talking to me. What do I do? And they're all like, oh, it's the devil, it's the devil. And I'm like, well, they didn't seem like they were hurtful or mean. They just wanted to talk.
Right.
And I want to, they wanted me to give a message to people and stuff like that. So I eventually came across a woman who was a Mormon, and she was the pastor's wife. And I was telling her about this experience that I had, um, where this woman actually, kind of like all these spirits were coming, and it was driving me crazy. And I'm praying and praying and praying, saying, God, please stop them, make it stop. And this woman shows up, and she's like, and I'm in my bed, and she like literally appears, and she said, "I'm here now. It's okay. You can calm down." And all of a sudden, I had this peace kind of come over me, and she started telling me how much she loved me, and she's always loved me, you know. And I'm like, "How do you love me if I don't even know you?" And she's like, "Oh, but I've known you forever and ever and ever." And I was just like, you know, and
Whoa.
yeah, so you know, and then she kind of told me a little bit about my kids, and I was pregnant with my son at the time, and she was telling me about his life and what was going to happen, and you know, and it's interesting because a lot of it came true, you know, and so they she kissed me on the cheek before she left, and she told me she was going to teach me how to meditate, she was going to communicate with me telepathically, and she was going to teach me everything I needed to know. And I was like, all right, you know, somebody's here to help me here, you know.
Right.
um, Now this stuff is not in the book, by the way.
Right. Right.
I was talking to my sister yesterday, and she's like, "Are you gonna like fill in the spaces because people keep on asking you these questions?" And I said, "I've been thinking about this a lot. I think I might write the pre-story, you know." But
Did did the Mormon woman that came to visit you, was that the wife of the pastor, right? And
yeah, no. So the woman that visited me, the spirit,
oh,
that
oh, she was a spirit. Oh, sorry. Okay, never
I
mind.
was telling the Mormon woman that on the phone
Yes.
I called, she was the wife of a pastor. I was telling her about this woman,
Yeah. Oh, I see. I see. Okay.
about this
Wow.
woman who visited me.
Oh, wait. How real does it look like? Like you said you had a long conversation with this woman and all that. Does it like does it look see-through, or do you know that you're talking to somebody that's not there physically the whole time?
I physically saw her, like I'm seeing,
Wow.
like I'm seeing you. I physically saw her, and that used to happen to me all the time. It doesn't happen to me.
Wow.
It doesn't happen to me hardly ever anymore. Um, but it used to happen a lot. And so like she physically showed up. I mean, I can tell you what her hair looked like, what dress she was wearing, you know, the whole nine yards. And and what's interesting is when they have physically shown up, I felt a physical presence, like touching, you could feel. Like and before she left, she kissed me on the cheek. She says, "I have to go now, but I am going to be, you can contact me through meditation. I'm going to teach you how to meditate, you know, blah, blah, blah." So um, she kissed me on the cheek, and I could feel the warmth on of her lips on my face, like physically.
Wow.
And and for like 2 weeks, it felt like she was still, you know, her lips were still there. And
Wow.
when I described this to my mother started crying, and she said, "Oh, describe the dress. What color is her hair? What does this look like? Blah, blah, blah. How tall was she?" She asked me all these questions, and she said, and she started crying, and she said, "You sounds like you're describing my mother." Now, was it her mother? I have no idea, you know, because her mother died when I was a baby. So I don't know.
You
But
never saw, did you ever see a photo though?
um, there was black and white photos, and you know how
Oh,
old photos kind of have a tendency of, you know, getting kind of
okay.
crazy and stuff. So it's kind of hard to say because I did see her like in color, you know, and she was bright and beautiful, and you know, but she looked like an old lady, you know. I mean, she wasn't like, you know, I mean, she had like the old
Yeah.
lady, you know, the gray hair and stuff like that. But you know, they can present themselves however they want. They could be, you know, whatever. I mean, she could have presented herself like a young maiden or something, you know. But
I mean, if she came in black and white, that would be too obvious.
yeah. So I told so kind of going back to the Mormon lady that
Mm,
I called her, and I was telling her, I said, everybody's been telling me she's been, you know, the wolf in sheep's clothing, and you know, it's the devil and everything. And I said, but you know, she told me she loved me. She kissed me on the cheek. Lady started crying and crying and crying and crying. And she said, you know, everything happens for a reason. I had lost my faith, and now you just restored it.
mm.
I know. Yeah. So I was like, whoa. And she's like, you don't understand what you just did for me. And I was like, okay. And then right after that, I started, I had friends that started showing up in my life that I started meeting that were interested in this kind of stuff. And they started dragging me around all these different places, these workshops and these meetings where these people, talked about this stuff and you learn this stuff. But so I kind of got a little new agey for a while, you know,
Yeah.
and I got, and it was it got to a point where these spirits like were constantly telling me, tell this person this, tell this person this, tell this person this. And I just wanted to put a stop to it,
Right.
'cause I was like,
That would
listen,
be annoying.
yeah,
Too
it's like,
much.
yeah, it was really hard because people are like calling me weird, you're strange, or really weird, really weird. And I already had that issue, okay, with people not liking me and feeling insecure. So now you add this onto it. Now people think you're some kind of witch, or you're weird, or you're scary, and you're a devil worshiper, all those things. And so it was I finally just prayed and asked God to take it away. And
And he did.
mhm, it all went away. And so my depression got worse. I went through a divorce. I left my husband. My depression got worse. Now I felt like I was walking blind. It was the dark night of my soul. It was it was worse, because I didn't even have God anymore. It's like meditation didn't work. Spirits, nobody to talk to. At least they were nice, and nothing, nothing.
Mm.
And I tried and nothing would happen. So I prayed for it back. And I started hearing a voice that would say, will you submit? And I was like, and at that time I'd gotten really wild, like I was single, I was pretty young, and I was, you know, I was coming into my beauty, and I was very sexual. I was smoking cigarettes, I was drinking, and I was having the time of my life. And I
Oh,
was like,
sorry. What did the voice say? What did the voice say?
will you submit?
What
Mm.
was the name?
No, he said, will you submit?
Oh, and you and you were like, nah.
I was like, I don't want to quit drinking. I don't want to quit having sex. I don't want to like I thought that meant that I had to like go live in a monastery and be a nun. I
Oh,
put the meaning and the definition around it. And and then my finances got really bad. My car got towed. I lost my job. I was fearful. And I'm like, I literally got down on my knees, literally on my knees, almost like the Muslims pray, arms out forward, down on your knees, crying my eyes out, begging God, help me, help me, help me, please, please, please help me. um I need help. I need my gifts back. I can't live like this. I don't know. I it's like you lose your GPS. Like I had no intuition. I had no idea. Like every decision I made was the wrong decision, and it would turn me down this road of destruction. And so I was like, I'm living without a GPS. I need this stuff back. I'm sorry.
hmm.
At least, those spirits were helping me. And all I would hear is, will you submit? Will you submit? And finally, when things got so bad, when my car got towed, I was like, yes, I'll do anything. And then it was like, okay,
What did you submit to though in that
I didn't
moment when
know. I submitted to whatever I was asked to do. And all I was asked to do was follow instructions, whatever that is. I could do whatever I wanted. I really had a loose brain. Like I just couldn't do anything destructive to myself, like overly drink, do drugs, you know, have
yeah,
sex a zillion people. You know, like none of that kind of stuff. Like I just to kind of keep it contained, you know, like don't
Right.
passive. And that was sort of like, okay, well, you know, we want you to live your life and have fun, but you know, it's not going to be like horrible for you. And
Oh, so wait, they came with the instructions. They were like, "Oh, you rain down a little bit. Like, don't go
yeah,
too crazy."
yeah, just rein it in here. Okay. You know, like keep it
Okay.
in like a little box here, but don't go too crazy. And so I could like, you know, live in the world and had fun and stuff like that. And but they said they'll contact me when they need something. And I was like, okay. So months went by, nothing happened. And one day all of a sudden I hear, um, you're gonna you're going to meet this person. This is what this person's name, and this is what you need to do.
Yep.
And, you know, and
Wow.
it would always end up being like that. And then I would end up, and then it would be like, okay. And then it's like, I would hear like a bell go off, like when something was starting or when something was ending, you know, like I would hear a bell and I was like, oh, it's about to end, you know? And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I did what I was supposed to do, you know, like, you know, this person somehow, you know, there's one guy who was an atheist and I was supposed to just get him to believe in God. And
What?
and yeah,
Did it work? Did it
yeah,
work?
yeah.
What'd you
And
do?
we would just go outside and smoke cigarettes and talk about God. And he would tell me he didn't believe in it. And so I'd tell him all the things that ever happened to me. And I said, well, it's kind of hard for me to believe. And he goes, well, I've never experienced anything like that. And I said, well, maybe you should pray for it. And so he did. And he actually had an experience and it changed his life. And yeah,
You know what? That's the classic one when somebody never prays, and
mhm,
then the first time, especially if they sincerely pray, boom, that's the big time. Because
yeah,
people because committed atheists usually fake pray like, oh, this is not gonna work. God, show yourself to me, or some ridiculous kind of make to disprove God. But if they're sincere in their prayer, almost always in some form it will be answered. It's just
yeah,
that usually it's not sincere, you know?
yeah. Well, it does say in the Bible that you have to pray in faith and really believe. And as long as you do that, then your prayers will be answered. And that's the whole key right there, you know, is that it has to be in faith. There has to be 100% belief, you know. You can't just like pray and hope, you know. It's got to be like, okay. You know, and I think he was sincere about it because he heard my stories and he was like, well, she can't be just totally crazy making this stuff up, you know. So and then
Wait, so sorry, I just need to ask you about this. You can't pray and hope because sometimes I feel like I'm praying. I'm pray and hope this is
I
but
guess
I'm like,
I guess it depends on how you define hope. Um hope I kind of tend to think is sort of like attached to fear. And if you're
okay.
praying out of fear or out of you know, please, you know, this is
Oh,
what
I see. Well,
happened
this
and that, you know, it's like and I think that it's
desperation.
yeah, desperation or scarcity or fear or not really believing God's going to do this, but you're sort of like doing it and grabbing onto it, thinking it's sort of maybe it'll happen. So I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. You know,
Right.
like this might work, you
Yeah.
know, out of versus I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna believe this, you know, or I don't know. I don't pray out of hope. I pray out of gratefulness. I always pray and assume it's very clear in the Bible what it says. It
Okay. I
literally
need to do I need to
says,
do that more because I like the way you outline it. Like it's not you're not praying out of lack, you're praying as it's almost like if it's already here and you pray to declare it and pray with faith.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And you know, there's I what I do personally now is like whatever it is that I need, I always just I wake up in the morning and I say, thank you, Lord, for paying for making sure that my bills are paid, all my needs are met. that all my things are paid on time. I get very specific. Like, thank you for eggs, thank you for you know, helping me find an editor for my book before I found it. I didn't have an editor at the time, and all of a sudden, one of my friends calls me up and says, I want to help you. And I was like, really? And it was like, it just seems to, and like I said, if you read it, like I've had people that are Christians like argue this point with me. And I just start throwing scriptures at them. You have to understand, I was definitely raised in memorizing scriptures. So it's real
Yeah.
easy to like throw this at them. It's like, it's still like kind of like
What,
got that programming and so it's like
what's a typical thing that it will say then?
um oh God, I hear so many different things. I heard just the other day from my cousin. She told me that if it's God's will. And I said, well, okay, let's go there. So I quoted a scripture to her about how God's will is for us to be happy and prosperous.
Oh yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah, that's an easy
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't there, and I said, you can sit here and Google, go ahead, let's do it together. Google Bible. What does this say God's will is? And there's a couple of things. God doesn't want us sinning. And so
Hmm.
it literally says several times in the Bible, go and sin no more. So Christians have a tendency of using salvation as their excuse for sinning. Oh, I'm a sinner. I was born into sin. So therefore, I sin every day. And, but God saves me. So I got that free ticket to heaven, so I can be a bad person all day long, and it doesn't matter because I'm going to heaven because I'm saved. And I believe Jesus was my personal savior. And it's so frustrating because what they're doing is they're really shooting themselves in the foot, because the more behavior that they have of greed and hate and regret and judgment and all these painful feelings that they oppose upon themselves and live in this manner is causing their own unhappiness.
Right.
And
Well, faith without works is dead, right? Because if they're not working on becoming a person closer to Christ, closer to God, then they're not, then their faith is not really active, right?
well, yeah, exactly. To me, my attitude is, well, you obviously don't have any faith, because that's why your prayers don't get answered. Because if you're going to sit here and say if it's God's will, then the reason why and that it doesn't work for you is because you don't have the faith for it to make it happen. Because I mean, it's very clear. It says if you have the faith that you can move this mountain, you can. I think there's this thing about that I found the other day. It was, I don't know why I'd never heard this one before, but it was about if you believe that you can grow the roots on this tree in a matter of minutes, then that tree would literally move for you if you had that faith. It's like it just literally is very, very clear about what faith is and how you have to do that. So for me, that's what I do. I literally pray in faith. I don't say, God, can you bring me this? I don't pray in a yes or no. I pray in the way it says in the Bible. It's like, it's just pray in faith. So I'm like praying gratefulness. And when I ask the spirits, I'm like, how should I pray? They always say, be thankful, be thankful, be thankful. If I ask them,
Hmm.
what do I need to do about this situation? They say, pray. And then of course, I always like ask them again, well, how do you want me to pray? Thankful, 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 grateful, grateful, grateful. I mean, that's all, it's like, and it's the same song and dance that you hear. I mean, and if you look at all the religions all the way across the board, there's always that message
Hmm. But what
about
I could see,
from that pain and living in get away from even Buddhism talks about the three deadly poisons, of greed and um, resentment, and I'm trying to think of what they all are. I'm sorry, it's been a while. So greed, resentment, and ignorance. By not allowing yourself to grow and educate yourself, you can get trapped in a space that can keep you from understanding what's truly there, or what your
Yeah.
possibility. So it's for me, it's always been kind of a goal of mine to make sure that I educate people as much as I can, and stay away from judging, you know, because I was there. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels
Yeah.
like to be ignorant. I know what it feels like to not understand and wish I did, and not be able to do things that I saw other people do, you know. So
Yeah. I could also see that if somebody's really in a the way you're speaking now on Christianity, they could be like, well, when you were down, prayer didn't help you then and stuff like that. But it did. It just took a while, right? Took a roundabout way, and now you're here where you are helping other people.
interestingly enough, when I prayed, I was taught to pray in faith.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, they did teach that. And so my mom told me it says, ask and you shall receive. And so when there was something I wanted, like I would get it, I would pray for it. And at the time, I didn't know how to pray the way I do now, but it was similar. It was kind of like, I would say I remember when my daughter was born and money was tight, and all I wanted was to have this beautiful comforter for her bed to let be all pretty and stuff like that. And I remember
Mm.
telling God, this is not a selfish prayer. This is just me saying I want something really nice for my baby to lay in. And I said, so, would you please make that happen for me? And then I just let it go and believed it would. And it did. And having a baby shower, and everybody got me what I needed. you know and so it was like,
Right.
and so it was always that way for me. I never had to worry if I lost my job. I would get it within a week. People would just like, how do you not worry about that kind of thing? But I'm like, because God takes care of me, because I asked for it and he gives it to me. And I know that's a really, really hard space to be in, because there's been challenges in my life where I started to lose my faith again, where I would be challenged by things, because the higher you get, the bigger the challenges get.
Mm.
The more you grow, the more.
Temptation.
Mm, I wouldn't say temptation. It's more like life challenges. It's
Right.
struggles. You have to. It's more like life lessons get harder. I see it as sort of like a video game. The first level. You know, it's
Yeah. Easy.
yeah, it's like when you're playing a game, you can get through the first few things or pretty easy,
Right.
you're like, oh, this is, and then you get to the next level, it's a little harder, and the next level is a little harder. Um, so I find that sometimes these lessons that I go through now, are so hard that it's like, I don't even want to do this anymore. It's like,
Right. Right. Right.
why does it have to be so hard? And and then eventually I learn it, I overcome it, and then it's like, you know you get
Mm.
that benefit that kind of comes from that. But it does get to be a struggle at times.
Yeah. Don't you think though, in a sense, in a spiritual sense, because at each level there might be some temptations. Because I know there's a famous case, Osho, which achieved a high level, and then he became famous for collecting cars and asking his disciples to give him all his money and stuff like that, which is for somebody supposedly not attached to money. So you know i- at any level somebody could be tempted at something. So did you ever experience anything like that where you achieved you've worked your way up and then there might be some kind of temptation or do this or take a shortcut here, stuff like that?
um Temptation, probably no, because I have such a um commitment and an oath and a strong, like, you know, like contract with God, that that's like it's it just can't be broken in that area. But but I can say that there's been times where I started to get what you would call like a God complex, um,
Okay.
where I got a little too full of myself, you know. You know, oh, you know, I've reached this level and I'm, you know, I'm above everybody else, you know.
Right.
Like I'm way better than it, you know. And then when that would happen, I'd, you know, I get slammed
Right.
around to show me that I wasn't. And and so I there was a lot of, you know, through that humility was something that I ended up having to learn. And but you know, it's kind of like one of those things. It's sort of like, you know, you learn not to behave this way or to be tempted by this or to do this thing. It's like as you get to a certain point, I think at maybe at a different level I was tempted, but not, you know,
Right.
maybe
Right. Right.
it was harder. I was tempted too much. It was temptation was like I would say was on the lower level of where I was. But when I got into a certain point, those kind of things, it's not really, you know, I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Um,
just, you know, I have
right.
like a like idea of where I should be and kind of just doesn't, it's not a desire for me. The
Right.
biggest desire that I have is knowledge, probably.
Right. Did at what point did people in your family start noticing that you're really changing in a good way?
Mm. Um, yeah, that was like after like this big event happened to me, which is what the actual book is about, which I get into in a minute.
Yeah.
Um, there was this huge shift in me. I mean, massive shift. And completely altered the way that I approached people and the way I viewed them. And I started seeing people completely different than the way I did before. And so I approached them with compassion and love and understanding from in the heart, you know.
Yeah.
And I started when that happened. I noticed that everybody around me changed, and it felt like I moved into the twilight zone, you know. It was like everybody loved me, everybody thought I was awesome, and everybody
Oh
treated
man.
kindness, and everybody was doing nice things for me. And you know, and it was like even my mom, you know, with her religious kind of way, she's doesn't judge, you know. It's like, whoa, where you people come from, man? Like, did I literally step into a different reality? You know, what happened here? But
Which you did. Which you
yeah,
did.
yeah. And there's just something to be said about when you change yourself, you change others, you
Mm.
know. It's the projection of energy that you're vibrating from, makes everything around you become part of that, you know.
Yeah. I really believe that. So, and then based on that experience, it took obviously took you years to write the book, but you've had all along the way growth and other experiences that you now put together in a book.
Mhm. Well, do you mind if I tell
Sure,
you?
go ahead. Yeah, yeah,
So, kind of going backwards, you know, because we've kind of brought it to where I am now. But there's this whole piece that we didn't talk about, which is really what the book is about. And what happened was, is I was divorced, and I was still seeking love. Right. The
hmm,
answer to my problem is a man, and
right.
so I was praying for that, and I would go outside and I'd look at the stars and I'd pray and say, Lord, bring me somebody who will love me. And then I heard this whisper, and it said, go to I'm sorry about my nose itching. I don't know what's going on today. But it was like, go to HoustonSingles.com or something like that. I don't remember what it was called, to be honest. It's been so
Yeah.
long. It was like, and I had never even heard of this before. So I go and get on the internet and Google it, and there it was. It was a dating website. So, and as soon as I signed up, this guy messaged me and we ended up in a relationship. So I thought it was the answer to my prayer. So when he broke up with me, I was devastated. So I go outside and I'm like, I thought you told me that, like, I'm like, my hands up in the air, and I'm like, what's the answer? Why would you bring me love? And so I hear this, go meditate. So I was like, all right, I'm going to run upstairs. I'm going to go to meditate and God's going to give me the answer. And I'm laying there and it's like late at night, right? And there's people coming in from bars. I lived in an apartment and I could hear these people and their alarms going off from them, turning their car off and everything. And I'm hearing people, I can hear them talking as they're walking by, coming home. And I'm like, oh my God, no, I'm never going to be able to get into the state to be able to hear God, And suddenly I hear this sound in the bathroom and it sounded like water running, right? And and so I sit up in my bed and I hear this voice that said, you need to write a book about love. And I was like, and I turned because it sounded like it was coming from the bathroom. And this man actually walks out of the bathroom and standing in the doorway. And I was like, who are you? And he said, you can see me. And I said, yes. And so he steps a little closer to me and he goes, and you're not scared? And I go, no. And he goes, comes over and he sits down on my bed and he says, why? And I said, oh, because I've got all these crystals around here and yeah, and everything. I used to put like crystals above my doorway, and I would charge them in the sun and all kinds of stuff, And so he kind of laughed just like you did, and he's sitting there and he's laughing. And I'm like, I don't understand what's so funny, right? And so he's like, you need to write this book. So I started arguing with him. Like, I'm not a writer. I'm the last person that knows anything about love. I've never even experienced love. Nobody's ever loved me. How can I do this? This is impossible. You're asking a task for me. And he's like, just write the book. And I'm like, okay, well, I need an editor and I need an agent and I need this and I need that. And I can't do this because I'm a beginner author. And he said, write the book and everything will come to you. You'll get everything you need. And I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. So then all of a sudden this thought kind of comes to me and I'm thinking, wait a second, there's this divine being sitting right here and I can ask him some questions. It's been a long time. Wow. What is heaven like? What's this? What's that? I'm like getting my questions all lined up in my head and he just disappears, like just fades.
Man.
Yeah. So then I was like, come back, and he's like, get up and go write this down so you don't forget it. And so I'm just laying there going, man, please just come back. Please just come back. And eventually I got up and I called my mom, told her, and I told her what happened. I said, Mom, I just had a visitation. I haven't had one since in a long time. And she's like, well, I believe God sent you messages and I believe messengers come, and she starts like reinforcing that, and telling me that she believes me. And I told her, I said, Mom, he told me to write a book about love. And she goes, well, you are love, honey.
That's a typical Texan way to say it.
I wish I could convert that in the book about the way that she talks with that real thick Texan accent. Yeah, okay, baby. You are. And so anyway, I decided I was going to try. So sit down and get my little laptop out. And for weeks, I'm typing away, writing about self-love, right? Well, this girl didn't know about self-love, right? So apparently I was doing it wrong. And the computer flashed on and flashed off and all of a sudden did this whole little reboot thing all by itself. like a whole system reboot, like by itself. I didn't touch anything. I was just sitting here writing, and the whole thing just blinks off and does the system reboot. And that kind of stuff, you have to like go into this part to go into this part to make this and click, are you sure you want to do this for that to happen? So for
Yeah.
this to happen, I knew they were trying to give me a message, right? So I shut that computer and I march myself downstairs and I go out to the lake and I look at the stars and I scream and I stomp and I stomped my foot and I was very upset, and I was like, I don't know what you guys are doing up there. Are you just sitting here watching, eating popcorn, like wondering, I mean, like, come on, I need some help. And I said, I'm not going to write another word until you send me a real life person. I want a person in a physical body, not somebody who shows up for about 5 seconds and disappear. I want somebody who is in a physical body and hangs out with me and calls me and text messages me, and I get to, see this person, spend some time with. I want a real life person. Bring me somebody that can help me with this task. And I said, I really want to do it, but and I really want to, whatever you want me to do, I'll do, but here's my conditions, And so I said, and I won't write a word until you do this. And so, but
Oh, wow.
I put other conditions on it. It had to be a saint or an angel or somebody who had that direct connection. Okay. Like it couldn't just be a psychic or somebody clairvoyant. It had to be somebody like straight up, connection,
So like
and
somebody legit that's also not actually there, but come physically there to be with you.
I said that if he didn't exist, if he didn't have anybody like that currently on earth, to put him in a body and bring him here. I was very clear about what I wanted.
Right.
So 6 months later, my sister tells me, so I'm waiting. Okay. By the way, I believed it. And there was no doubt in my mind that this wasn't going to happen. So I'm like prepping for this spiritual master, like Jesus,
Right.
to show up. Right. And I'm like, doing a detox and, trying to get myself ready, meditating every day because, I didn't know how evolved he was going to be. And, I had to be at the right vibration, like I was just all like, get myself ready. And my
Right.
sister asked me to take her to the crystal store because she needed some crystals. And she was having some problems with her husband. And she thought maybe, getting some crystals to kind of clear the energy of the house would help. So I was like, yeah. So we're heading to the store. And as we're heading that direction, I hear a voice that says, don't go to the crystal temple. You need to go to, I forget, I don't remember the name of this place, but
The other one, the other store.
the other story. Right. So it tells me specifically which one to go to. And I'm like, oh, we have to go somewhere else. I just got a message to go over here. And she's like, well, I don't care where we go. And I said, okay, well, we're going to go there. And I thought maybe it was because there's this healer there that worked there. He was always there every day. And I was thinking, oh, this is a great idea anyway, because I can get him to work on my sister. Go into the store and I point out all the stuff and I was like, here's the rocks over here, just go, everything's labeled, you can sit here and look and figure out what you want. So I go over to the front desk. I knew the guy that worked there and I was like, hey, is Harry here? And he's like, no, but Patrick is. And I go, who's Patrick? So he takes me over there. I meet the guy and here comes out this guy and he's like, looks just like the man that showed up in my room.
Oh, wow.
Except for he was wearing this black linen like ritual gown and he had these mala beads. A real tall American guy, all American guy, but real tall, like almost 7 foot tall. Like he's like 6'5", 6'6", real tall, shaved head. And then he approaches me and he's all like bowing to me, and I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. I was like, hi, Michelle, reach out my hand. And he goes, come, I need to talk to you. I was like, okay. So he starts talking about my sister. He knew everything about her. He knew everything about what was going on with Jason, knew about her daughter. And I was like, whoa, you're good. Let's go grab my sister. So I grab her, I pull her in the room, and We ended up spending like hours in there where he was just literally like knew everything about our life. Like it was the craziest thing. I mean, to the details, like beyond comprehension. There was a point in there where he actually was reading from his mind, like astro traveling over to this letter that she had written that was at her home, and he was reading it.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah.
That's crazy.
I know. It was like crazy. And so I interrupt at one point and said, and she's like, Michelle, stop. He's reading the letter. And I go, what letter? The one that's at home that I wrote to Jason. And I'm like, what? And it like clicked in my head. I was like, oh crap. And every time I would think something, he'd turn to me and he'd address it and say, whatever it was, like I thought he was attractive, and he was a monk. So I was like, oh my God, he's so much my type. He's so sexy. Like I was thinking those things, and I'm like, oh, but he's a monk. He's got to be celibate. And he looks at me and he said, I'm Taoist. And I went,
And you were like, what?
and and he said, we're not celibate. And I went, oh, he's got to be gay, like in my mind, I'm like, he's got to be gay. And I mean, I was just like going through all these things, and he turned to me and said something about his partner, and then he named her name. So it was like, I'm not gay. Um, and it was just really interesting. Like we were so shocked by the experience. And and when I said goodbye to him, he threw this energy at me, like this pulsar of energy that soared into me, made my heart like just, and then it rushed into my head, and I started crying like instantly. And I was like, what
Wow.
did it just do to me? And he's like, I had to do it so you would know it's real. And I went, what's real? And he goes, you'll find out. And I was like, okay. So after that, I went home. He sends me a text message and said, I'm glad Jenny's doing better. Um, he goes, tell her though to come see me on Friday, and if she can't come, you come. So I show up, and when I showed up, he wanted to talk about me, and I wasn't having it at all. I was so closed off by this time. No one's be able to give and break this door down. It's like, you're going to see
Mm.
what I want you to see, and that's it. And he was trying, and I was just, I'm good. Life is good. I'm happy. He's just like, he wasn't having it. And he was just like, oh, okay. And he's like, why are you here? And he just like real loud. And you just lean forward and, why are you here? And I go, because you asked me to be here. And he was like, oh, we're going to play that game. And I go, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. And he said, okay, let me see if I can recall exactly how it happened. And he kind of turned his head and he looks over to the side like he's watching something.
Mm.
And he says, okay, so you looked up in the sky, you screamed very loudly, you made all these demands, and so here I am. And he just stared at me, and when he did, his eyes like changed colors. It was really weird. Like,
Wow.
it's like shifted colors. And then I was like, you know just sitting there for a second. And then he goes, and if you would have asked a little nicer, you might have gotten somebody a little nicer, but instead you got me. And I was like, oh, you're fine, you're fine. I was like, you're good, I'll be grateful, I don't care. And I was like, how do you know? Who told you? And he goes, those who know all. And I was like, okay. So I didn't doubt anything from that point on. I was like, all right, let's get moving. Teach me about love, show me how to write this book, to, give me the knowledge of the heavens, like open the
Oh,
floodgates.
wow.
Like I'm ready. Um, And then there are so many things that happened during that time. Uh, Traveling the astro plane. He used to come and say, "Come on, let's go," and he would show up, like literally.
Like
He's
in your
like,
house
like
or
just appear in my bedroom, tap me on the shoulder, and say, "Come on," and then I'd just leave my body and go with him.
oh wow.
Yeah, and yeah, and so it was a lot that happened during that time frame. He introduced a lot of beings to me that I still have a relationship with, and that was really interesting because I was raised Christian, to be meeting, Greek gods and Hindu gods and I never even heard of fairies and stuff. It's like I was like, all right. So yeah, and during the time, it's like they would have it's certain time frames with me, just kind of like if somebody couldn't help me with something, somebody else would show up and try because I was a difficult person. And
Right.
it was
Wow.
trying to overcome some of these obstacles that I was going through was really challenging because I'd get stuck in a mental pattern of belief or hardship or pain or whatever. And yeah, so they would um different ones would show up for different various reasons to help me. The one
And
that stuck most was Athena. She
Athena.
she was around a lot, helping me overcome a lot.
How was Athena?
Friendly, very, very nice. She was the nicest of them all, I would say. Um,
The nicest of the Greek gods, you mean?
oh no,
Or
except the ones that showed up. She was very kind, very understanding, and would just keep on trying different ways. Like, well, let's try this. Let me show you this. Let me take you here. Let me show you a different way. Um, very very much like that, for her to be the goddess of war, it was really kind of different experience for me. Um,
hmm,
I didn't experience her that way. I it really experienced her as somebody who really like helped me overcome challenges. And I mean, just so patient, very patient, like, and always helped me kind of like overcome the brighter side of things.
hmm.
I met the goddess Isis as well. And she I've actually had multiple experiences. I still have experiences with her. She shows up periodically, but during that time frame, she actually showed up and asked me if I just wanted to congratulate me for writing the book. And I said, well, I hadn't written it yet. And she goes, oh, but you will.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair
So
enough.
yeah, I know. And I'm like, thanks for all the confidence. Yeah, it was interesting. There was a lot that went on during that time frame, and I don't get that kind of activity now. Just it's
Right.
like,
How
but there was a lot during that time frame. I was with him for 3 years, and
3 years? I was gonna ask. Yeah, 3 years to write the book, and in during that time, it probably changed you a lot because there were
no,
the process.
I did not write the book until recently. I three
Oh,
years
but they were teaching you. They were teaching you
they were
how
teaching
about
me
love, and then okay,
Mhm. Yeah.
gotcha.
I never experienced what real love was until I met him, period.
Did you recognize him at the other like healing place when you went back? That he was the person that appeared first in your bedroom?
It, when he told me about the um
The prayer.
yeah, exactly when he said that, I went all of a sudden it was like the flash kind of came in my head.
Oh,
I was like, "Oh, you're the one." And he goes, mm-hmm. And then I had a memory of somebody else that showed up years ago, like when I was pregnant, and this one particular spirit that was always like visiting me or, showing up. And, and, I really didn't know what to think about this particular one a lot. It was, he would just randomly show up and, tell me something. And I started to realize it was him. And I was like, wait a second. And then I would have another flash and I would like, oh, and he's like, uh-huh. And I went, and it's like we had this telepathic connection. Like it's almost like he was dumping it in my head and showing me. And I said, how long? And he said, I said, if I'm looking at these memories, I can go back as in my early 20s, maybe. And he said, and before that. And I said, well, that's all I can remember, and, and he's like, okay. And but he claimed that we've had multiple lifetimes together, and we would have these long conversations, and he said, why do you ask me this in every lifetime? Apparently I asked him about enlightenment, and what does it take to be enlightened? He said I asked him that in this life, every lifetime, and he said in every lifetime I tell you the same thing. He goes, maybe you'll get it in this one.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, he gave me 3 years, and then at the end of the 3 years he said, be gone, little butterfly, fly away, go apply everything that I taught you, and if you don't apply it, then don't come back. And
So after that period, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so he told me not to come back for 3 years, and if in 3 years I hadn't applied what I learned, then don't ever contact him again. And
Oh, wow.
Okay. So here's where it gets kind of interesting. I mean, not that the whole thing isn't interesting. I mean, there's a lot.
Right.
It's kind of a weird story, but and what's interesting is I remember going back, I was super excited. I was counting the days, 3 years to the dot, I was like, all right, 3 years, I'm ready, and so I had to come up with an excuse to see him, So he was an acupuncturist. So I was like, I'm going to make an appointment with him. Oh, my back is hurting. All of a sudden I manifested back pain.
Oh.
And it really was hurting, and it was like, so I told him that I needed some help and I would like to make an appointment with him to get some acupuncture. And that's how I showed up. And when I was there, I told him, I said, I've accomplished everything you've asked of me. I was so proud of myself. I mean, I was like high in the world. Michelle thinks she's the goddess already. And, it was like, and he just kind of like knocked me down a few notches. But what was interesting about that is he actually had a real conversation with me that sounded like he was human. Now, and this is the part I don't think I told you, was that he used to talk to me in these very abstract ways where he would say things that sounded like he was an alien. There was a point where he was gone for a little while, and I told him I missed him. And I said, oh my God, I'm so glad you're back. I've missed you so much. And he's like, what is this missing thing? I don't understand that humans have. Can you explain this to me? I don't understand. What is this? He just, he would say the weirdest things and ask me the weirdest questions. Like, why do humans do this? One time I asked him, I said, why do you refer to everybody else outside of yourself as humans? You're a human too. He's like, no, I'm not. He would get all like bent out backwards about it, and like, I'm not human. And I'm like, okay. So one day I asked him what he was. I said, well, if you're not human, what are you? I mean, I was expecting him to say something like, Anunnaki, or what do they call the lizard people, or that can change, shift,
Oh, wow.
shift
Right.
shape,
Shape
whatever.
shifters. Yeah.
I don't know. I had everything in my mind. I was convinced he was Enoch reincarnated. I was convinced he was Metatron. I was convinced I went through, he was an alien, a physical alien, and then he shapeshift, that's how
Yep.
he changes eye color. And I was, like, I went through everything trying to figure it out. So I just came out and asked him. And, he didn't give me a real clear answer. I said, well, if you're not human, what are you? And he goes, well, I guess the best way to describe me is you could say I'm an elemental. Stuff.
What?
An elemental.
Yeah,
That's what he said.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Elemental.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was a real human, I mean, he had a physical form and he ended up marrying and he had children. So, I mean, but what was really weird, okay, getting back to that, when I saw him for that first time, that was really weird. He even dressed differently. Like he was wearing like a white linen, shirt and a white linen pants. He wasn't wearing
Yeah.
the black, you know, I look like I'm, a priest that lives underground kind of thing, or
Hmm.
Black Sabbath or something. It was, he was like all fresh and light looking and walks in and gives me a hug and talks to me like a normal person and like I was having a real conversation, like with a colleague. It was really weird. And I remember
Mm.
going home and telling my sister, did somebody like invade his body for a little while? And where did he go? Oh, now he's gone. This is not this is just the host, and it was really bothering me. Like I was like, what happened to the person I was talking to? Did he go away?
Mm.
I don't know. It was or he just changed his approach with me because I was different, you know.
Or maybe he's been alive all the 3 years and he's become human.
Maybe. My other thought too is like after being here for a while, it was easier to adjust to, you know,
Yeah.
like you ever watch some of those shows like Mork and Mindy and all these
Yeah.
different shows where they start off or they're like an alien and they're acting all weird and and stuff, and then suddenly they're acting normal because they learn. So that was
Yeah.
my other thought, okay, he eventually learned. I didn't know. But he ended up starting some kind of school, and he ended up getting all these different disciples, and he recruited all these people, and he was teaching Taoism, and he was doing all this stuff. Like he was really serious about like helping people, but his experience with everyone was different. Um,
Mm.
like I could talk about him and somebody else would talk about him completely different. And then another person would talk about him completely different. It's almost like they would get all these different versions of him. Um,
Wow.
mhm.
But they would have positive experiences of him, or
Some, the ones that didn't, they would go away. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
he was definitely an odd duck, um, very different, very I would say weird from my perspective.
right. Well, what
Yeah.
when you saw him for acupuncture, why didn't you ask him about like something that you talked before? Did you ask him about something that you talked before, or did you just talk about work stuff and just kind of casual?
Oh yeah, we talked about things. I mean, it wasn't like he didn't have a memory of us. Um,
Okay, okay.
yeah, that can go away. It's just his communication style and the way that he interacted with me was different. Um,
Oh,
he didn't treat me like the way he did before. I mean, he was pretty oh, I don't even know how to explain it. It was do as I say or I'm going away.
mm,
And it was literally like that. Um, he So one of the key things that happened was he was trying to get me to stop with the negativity in my head.
hmm.
And so he started invading my thoughts all the time. And basically every time I thought something that he didn't like, he would send me a text message and say, stop thinking about that. Stop doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
And then he started getting intrusive, like watching me, like remote viewing or something. I guess that's the only way I can define it. He would watch me and then he would comment about it. And if it was something of the sexual nature that I was doing, he would make comments about that too. And I
wow.
um I I started to realize that I couldn't hide from him. I
Hmm.
couldn't hide my thoughts, I couldn't hide my actions. So I just changed it. Like I made that decision. I'm like, I'm not going to think any way that he doesn't approve of anymore. and
Okay.
I mean, because I was afraid he was going to go away. I mean, you literally, I prayed for something that's so amazing and it shows up, and I was scared to death it was going to go away. Like, I need this in my life, you know?
Yeah, of course. Wow.
Like,
But then that's a crazy story. But then in the meeting 3 years, you were applying the blueprint for how to become love that he gave you, basically.
yeah,
And others showed you.
he showed me how to fix all of this. And it started with changing the way I think and changing the way I behave. Like, so for instance, you asked me about temptation, right?
Hmm.
And those times, yeah, I would have been tempted, and then I would have self-sabotaging thoughts and, felt horrible and hated myself because of it. But
Hmm.
what I learned, because all I cared about was pleasing him, because I didn't want him to go away, because it was the first person that had ever loved me. So I was going to do anything he asked. So if he said stop thinking negative, I was going to do it. And so but it was, at first I didn't realize that I could. But when he started invading my thoughts and coming at me and letting me know that he was disapproving of those things every single time I would think a certain way. Um, and like I remember being very upset because some guy dumped me or something. I don't know. It was in one of those other guy drama things. And he said, he sent me a text message that said, stop it. And I said, I'll get over it eventually. And he said, or you can choose to get over it right now. He goes, choose.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And so I started realizing that I can make instant decisions and instantly choose how I was going to think or how I was going to behave or whatever. And I started choosing how I was going to think. I altered my thoughts. I stayed very cognitive of, this is how I'm going to think. I'm going to control how I think. I'm going to think about the things that I want to do, the things I want to create, the things that I love. And that's it.
Wow.
And I literally, like if I was going to paint a picture, I would sit here and think about, what do I need? You know, what I want to draw, what I want to do. If I'm going to do something with my son, I would think about, what are we going to do? And when I was there with him, oh, that was another thing. He was all about being present. Just be with him 100%. And I was like, okay, that's all I would do. It's like when I spent time with my son, I would be with him 100%. I wouldn't be thinking about anything except for that. Like I literally would follow those instructions. Everything he gave me, I did. And it reprogrammed the way my brain worked. I did it for so long
Hmm.
that it changed the way I thought automatically. So
Hmm.
I I just don't do certain things because I know what the repercussions are. I don't think a certain way because I know where it can take me,
Yeah.
Uh, I I know better because I mean, and I sculpted my brain the way I wanted it to think, and over time, even more so, like even after when I started realizing, because one of the things that I did was I got so interested in certain things, and he kind of started leading me in a certain direction, like take this class, do this thing, And I got
Like what kind of classes? Like, give me an
like
example.
hypnosis was one of them. I got very fascinated with neuroscience, how the brain worked, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Um, learning mental control,
Yeah.
being cognitive of your thoughts and your behaviors, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And then making it a habit, the habit to be the person you want to be versus the habit of the person you don't want to be. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Like you were creating a new person in a way inside your mind, but also through, I imagine, prayer, like prayerfully envisioning and
mhm.
also doing, like lock in step and thinking.
I would say that the prayer was part of it, but it's a bigger part of it now.
Yeah.
Back then it was more about him and me. And then, of course, eventually he started, like when I would struggle with certain areas, he'd bring in other people to help me, or spirits or deities or whatever you
Yep.
want to call it. And there was a couple of things that I really had a hard time with. And he was very, and sometimes he was pretty gentle with me because he knew I was trying really hard. And I would like, just start crying and say, I am trying so hard. I really don't want you to go away. And he was like, I know it's like I'm asking you to pee in a corner in a round room. And that's the way he would always talk to me. He would always use these like weird metaphors. you know?
About peeing, especially weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Because if you think about it, there's no corners in a round room,
Yeah.
at least from the perception that you think of. So, um, you always think of everything as being three dimensional in a certain way. And he was showing me how to think outside of those dimensions
Mm.
and, just try again, try it this way. Sometimes if I get stuck on something, he would just call me and we'd stay on the phone for hours and he'd just sit there and just tell me stories until I get it. you know,
Awesome.
you know.
And then and then after those 3 years, then you had the blueprint to write the book, and then off you went. And
Yeah,
oh,
sort of, at least I thought. And but I wasn't comfortable enough with that level of vulnerability. I mean, it took me so all of this happened about like 18 years ago.
mm,
I know it's a long time ago. And uh I mean, I wrote the whole thing, but I would never publish it because I was too scared to. I mean, that was the one thing I was still hadn't overcame. And I ended up he passed away, by the way. And
oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I ended up looking for more because I was like, this can't be it. This can't be the end of my spiritual journey. So I started seeking more. And I eventually ran into sort of accidentally a I'm trying to think of what you would call it, a society or a group or an order or a tradition
Hmm.
or a collective of people that teach higher knowledge.
Yep.
And I eventually joined that. And you have to go through like an initiation. And the initiation actually like puts you on your on path. It's sort of like, and it's like an alchemical shift that moves you. And it's like, this is one thing I've learned, especially working with him and then joining this. It was like, there's no end. It's infinity.
Yep.
It's like right about the time you think you're good, you get a little peace for a little while, and then it's like, it's almost like you go into warp drive and you're at another place that you got to figure out. And you hang out, you figure it out, and then you're like sailing on the ocean, feeling all calm and gentle, and then
Yep.
it's like, you
There's
know,
more to learn. There's more
and
to
there's
grow.
more to learn, more to grow, and it doesn't ever end. And I and that was something I really started grasping, because what would happen is every time I go through another initiation, I would end up having this huge shift again, and it was like almost like a forced shift into, like, okay, we're, it's like, if you think about those rooms that you see in like haunted houses, or stuff like that, and it's like you go into this and it's all like this way, go into,
Hmm.
and go into another one, it's like this is something totally different. It's like I feel like I'm in one of those like mazed houses that you can't find your way out of.
Right.
You go over here, and like it's like those clue rooms that you got to figure it all out, and all these things, and yeah, you get help, from like specific angels, like guardian angels that are assigned to you during this process to help you through the process. you know there's
Oh
exercise,
yeah.
and all these things, to help you evolve. And I was talking to my personal proctor that I work with, and I was like, who decides to do this shit? I mean, like, who decides to do this? And she's like, you, me. And I go, I don't know. I sit here and I'm start to question my sanity sometimes, because why would I put myself through this? And she's like, oh, but the rewards. And I go, I know. But every time, it's still, it's like, oh my God, here we go again.
Mm.
Like the
Your
turn.
personal what in this
Mhm.
spiritual organization she's helping you? Your what do you
Oh,
call it? Your personal
yeah, a proctor. Um,
proctor.
yeah, it's sort of like a spiritual teacher that's assigned
Mm.
to.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, each person gets somebody that's assigned to them that they work with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Are you at liberty to say what kind of organization or
I'm not, yeah, yeah, I'm not like I'm not silenced to that, if you want to call it. The It used to be years ago, it was considered what you would call a secret order, kind of
Yep,
like the Templar, the White Hats, or all these
yep.
Illuminati, and all that kind of stuff. Um, this is actually called the Golden Dawn,
Hmm.
and it's a hermetic. They call it a like Kabbalistic hermetic order, where they're teaching, there's like Hermes, there's Greek philosophy, there's Judaism and Kabbalah, and this it's sort of like basically what they do is they kind of like grab a lot of like ancient scripts and ancient teachings that have been passed down mouth to ear for generations.
Mm.
And that's the only way that you can get this information, or learn these techniques. And um, so like an example of something would be like somebody who sits there and meditates, and they sort of like naturally astral project, okay, or astral
Right.
travel. um a lot of times they don't really even know where they're going to go, they just sort of land somewhere.
Hmm.
As opposed to like what they teach us is how to, you know where the doorway is, what the key is, how to unlock it, how to get there safely, and what to do there, who's there, and what can you learn there. So it's sort of like there's a lot of information that's kind of given, instead of just because like for me, I would just kind of go into the space, and then I just project somewhere, and I would land over here.
All
uh,
right. Gotcha.
I remember we started learning how to do like planet scrying, and so basically we would basically go to a planet, and I ended up I had to go through like 12 planets, and you have to write these essays about it. To
Oh
prove that.
wow.
I mean,
Essays.
yeah, you had to like write about your experiences and all that kind of stuff. So but anyway, I ended up in this one planet that I've visited many times, and I remember like showing up and going, "Oh my God, I know you!" And all this time I didn't even know that I had been visiting, Venus or something. It was like all this time. It was a planet it was a place that I would go to all the time. I mean, literally to this day, a lot of times I would just close my eyes and I would find myself there. Like I would start
Wow.
seeing in color and immediately start, you know, um, getting there. And it was the same, guide that would show up that was there before. And it was really interesting. I found that kind of fascinating that now I'm like, there's the reason why I've been going here a lot. I understand, you know, so,
Right, because you have a connection to it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so okay, let's because I'm mindful of time because we're
Oh, no, no.
running on almost 2 hours here.
Oh,
Yeah, let's finish up with a bit of the about the book. Well, what made you then because you said you wrote it like sounds like you wrote it at least 10 years ago, most of it or all of it, right? But then you didn't publish it for a long time until you got uh more vulnerable, more ready to share it with the public at large.
yeah.
And I'm guessing that the work you're doing, the being in spiritual groups and all that has prepared you to be more open to being vulnerable, opening
Yeah.
up.
I went through an initiation that made this really huge shift on me. And part of that was I just put all of my inhibitions aside and just start doing things. Like if it came to
Mm.
me, I just did it. If I wanted to, create a group or a workshop or this or that, I just did it. And it was just like all my inhibitions just went away. This
Mm.
particular um, energy that I stepped into just kind of created that for me. And that was when I actually decided that I was going to go through and, you know, create a really good beginning, have a really good ending. Those were the two things that I was kind of like not really sure how to start it. So I started in the book I had written in pieces, like here's this experience, here's this experience. So I had to like literally like put it together. And so I started working on that. And then I hired somebody to do the editing. I went through Amazon, but apparently it wasn't it was somebody that it wasn't really Amazon. I think they
Yeah.
actually call themselves Amazon editors or whatever. And I wasn't really happy with their editing. I was very unhappy with it. And I was talking to one of my friends about it. And I said, really frustrated because I don't really know what to do. I just spent, quite a bit of money on them, and I just feel like they're not giving me what I want. They're missing, really big things like it's something which should be plural and it's not. Like it was just really weird stuff. And so she has a PhD, very intelligent, has written lots of papers, articles, I published a lot of stuff, in her field. She's a scientist. And
Hmm.
she said to me, she goes, let me help you. She goes, send it to me. And I said, okay. She ended up editing the whole book, and I think she did a great job. Because
Awesome.
she didn't change anything. Like she didn't take away the feel. Like that was the one thing I didn't want to
Yeah.
happen. Somebody changing my voice. I wanted it to be the same. I just needed somebody to just, make sure that I didn't have a run-on sentence, and, a plural wasn't put in the wrong way, or, using the same word over and over again, maybe find something better, that kind of stuff, professional editing. And yeah, so she did it for me. And and then I it just aired recently. So I did on my own artwork too, because I used to be a graphic artist. And so I did all the all the graphics and the artwork myself, like the cover I designed myself. So
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. And for the last thing, what's the one thing you learn about in those 3 years about love that might maybe surprise people?
mm. Oh well, that every single person in this world is a reflection of yourself. And the only way that you're really going to be able to um, see that true nature of that person is if um, you have that within yourself. So basically, I can only see within you what I see within myself. So if I see myself as a person that can't be faithful, I'm a cheater or something like that, then I'm gonna assume you're gonna be that way. So what I discovered was the reason that I couldn't experience love was because I couldn't I couldn't find that within myself. And the second that I decided to love myself, I found that it was so much easier to be able to believe that other people could be that way and to accept it and receive it. I could experience that because I believed in it. It's like knowing something is really real and being able to know that it's inside of everybody.
Hmm.
Um, so
Wow.
I can see it within everybody.
It's like that quote also conversely is true, like that quote by Carl Jung that whatever really bothers you about other people is something that really bothers you about yourself because you're seeing a reflection of
Seeing that
yourself.
reflection, I mean, it's on some level at least,
Yeah,
on some level. I mean, it's not always exactly like that, but it is on some level that there is some kind of a reflection
yeah.
of something. And I can tell too, like sometimes like if stress in my life gets a hold of me, I can get kind of self-absorbed. And then and when I'm sitting in that space, I can't I'm viewing people from the angle of what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And but if I can step outside of that and remember who I am,
Hmm.
okay, and step into that, and then just kind of like allow that part of me to step into the other person, then I can see them as extraordinary and beautiful and have compassion for their pain and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
it's something I have to be cognitive about because the energies around you can affect you, and that's something else I've learned is that even planetary energies can affect you. So there's I mean, you have this whole collective of this world that's going through all this crazy stuff. We got a crazy president that's who the hell knows what he's doing half the time. And
Biden doesn't even know when he's up sometimes.
yeah, exactly. I just like, my husband comes in and starts telling me stuff, and I'm like, and I'm done with it. Why won't they just get rid of you? But yeah, it's like you have the energies of all this other stuff. So it's like these things are going to affect you. I can get affected by that. I'm not immune to negative energy, but the difference is that I'm aware of it and I know how to adjust it. I know how to fix it. And I know how to kind of channel that divine energy back into me and allow myself to view it from a better lens. You know what I mean? People from a better
Yeah.
lens. I mean, I can literally sit with somebody who's a really bad person and see beauty in them now. But if I'm in a bad space, I can see the bad. You know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it just and I try not to be that in that space. But like I said, sometimes I'm like, oh my god, what is going on in the world? These energies, and then I have to just kind of like become aware and fix it because
Yeah.
I know how to fix it. It's just sometimes I like to float, and when floating you get impacted instead of
Hmm.
constantly controlling. Like, I don't want to live my life constantly controlling everything, all these energies and banishings and all this other stuff all the time. So I'll just kind of float for a little while, and then it's like end up in this a lot of static somewhere, and it's like, all right, I got to clear this out. you know
Yeah. I noticed that recently, and whenever it's more noticeable when I'm in a bad mood or bad space. I'm like listening to songs I usually like. I'm like, and at some level, I hate them. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like all this murkiness, and I'm disliking stuff that I usually like. I'm like, I don't like this, you know.
Yeah,
But
I've done it even with TV shows, it's like, oh my God, I'm finding myself watching too much crime drama. Stop it. You
yeah, yeah.
you know, yeah.
All right.
It's
Well,
so the name
this,
of the book, I'll tell you that real quick, just for anybody
yep,
who wants. The name of the book is called Be Your Own Hero, A Mystical Journey to Self-Love. My name is Michelle Thompson. So, and it's available on Amazon. I just found out it's on Goodreads because I just Googled that just the other day. But the publishing company I'm working with are supposedly putting in all these different formats. So,
yeah.
uh, as of now, I know it's on Goodreads and Amazon. So, um,
I'm gonna put it in the links below the video if you're watching
okay,
on YouTube or Rumble or
okay.
Facebook. All
Thank you so
right.
much. A very
Michelle Thompson, everybody. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching the podcast. And let me see. Can I stop here? Yes.